Destination Medicine is a collaborative initiative of regional training hubs. With first-hand lessons learned from those who have gone before, this podcast is designed to assist and inspire anyone interested in pursuing a medical career in rural and regional Australia. Welcome to Destination Medicine. I'm Peter Letts. Sometimes you meet an individual whose passion and commitment to the bush is matched by their concrete efforts to improve regional life. Dr. Robert Easther is one of those individuals. He's not only strongly committed to providing excellent anaesthetic services in the Riverina and beyond, but is personally working on training schemes to attract new specialists to regional areas and to convince them to stay. But first, Dr. Robert Easther starts by describing the beginning of his journey to Nicole Goodman.
So I studied undergraduate medicine, and so my decision to study medicine was very late. It was right at the end of year 12. I think I was quite naive in terms of what was involved in being a doctor. The idea of a variety of work, working in teams, the hands-on nature of medicine certainly appealed to me, and so that's why I chose it.
So then how would you describe your current role?
I would say it's complicated. I do a number of different things. I'm a consultant anaesthetist. I work in public and private anaesthesia in both New South Wales and a little bit in Tasmania as well. I have particular clinical interests in obstetric anaesthesia, anaesthesia for orthopaedic surgery as well. A few other things that I do, I'm the supervisor of training at Wagga Wagga Base Hospital in regional New South Wales, and I'm also the rotational supervisor, the inaugural rotational supervisor for our new regional anaesthesia training scheme based out of southern New South Wales as well. Within our department in Wagga, I have quite an active role supporting trainees and colleagues and generally trying to make the place better.
That's amazing. Why anaesthesia in obstetric and orthopaedic?
Some things you find more interesting as you go, and it's hard to say why those things appeal to you. Other things are because certain opportunities, certain doors open for you and you're afforded certain opportunities. So I was quite keen to work overseas for my provisional fellowship year, and the opportunity arose to work in Toronto, Canada for a year, and that fellowship was a subspecialty fellowship in obstetric anaesthesia. So I certainly enjoyed obstetric anaesthesia before then, and the fellowship was appealing to me, but my ongoing interest really stems from that experience, which was unique. Regarding orthopaedic anaesthesia, it's more to do with my enjoyment of regional anaesthesia. And also the balance of cases that you tend to do in your day-to-day practice also shape your interest, because you tend to focus your efforts in what you're doing and gain new knowledge and skills in that area.
It's fascinating and so important, the point that you make about opportunities coming your way. It can open up a whole new world that you may not have thought of previously.
And some things that you may be vaguely interested in, you can become very interested in. And it's certainly interesting reflecting. I had no interest at all in obstetrics as a junior doctor. But I think that's because, as you mentioned, I wasn't really given that exposure or those opportunities. I didn't meet the right obstetrician to spark an interest in that. Being a male medical student, it's often difficult to get exposure in obstetrics, and you're often quite shy to become involved. Once you're then part of the hospital system for years and that shyness disappears, you realise that obstetric medicine's really interesting and would suit me quite nicely.
Well, do you remember when you first became interested in anaesthetics, specifically as a career?
I do. I was PGY2, so I was a junior doctor in the hospital. I'd done a number of specialties, including anaesthetics. I was quite sure that I wanted to work in acute care, but actually initially was thinking perhaps emergency medicine. I think I realised that I was a better fit for anaesthetics. I liked that combination of intellectual stimulation and procedural skills that's offered by work in anaesthesia. And I found that anaesthesia came naturally to me, almost as if it chose me rather than the other way around. I think it's important to choose something that you're good at. Those things tend to be more enjoyable.
What was your second choice for fellowship training and how did you decide?
I didn't have a second choice, and I think most people don't. You tend to have a goal in mind and put yourself on a pathway to try and achieve that goal, and sometimes you come up short, and not everyone ends up in the specialty that they initially tried to get into. if I could change now, I would be an obstetrician. I think a lot of what I enjoy about anaesthesia is also part of obstetric medicine in terms of the intellectual and procedural medicine in combination, as well as that dynamic teamwork environment that I think both specialties offer. Back then, I think I would have done emergency medicine, but I think now I would have regretted that. I think that wouldn't have been a good fit for me.
Why is that? What is it about emergency medicine?
I think as a junior doctor, I was attracted to the work in emergency medicine as a junior doctor, but it's important to remember that a career in a specialty of medicine is mostly as a consultant, and the life of a consultant and the work of a consultant can be very different to that of a trainee, and certainly that's the case in emergency medicine. And so I realised that consultant life wasn't the right fit for me.
Amazing. Tell me a little bit about the pathway that you took to fellowship.
It's a 5-year training program in anaesthesia after completing a few years as a junior doctor. The first 4 years of my training were in Tasmania. So I worked in northwest Tasmania, Burnie, for the first 2 years. And then I did my second 2 years in Hobart with the various subspecialty rotations required for training. And then the 5th year of training is a provisional fellowship year, which is immediately before becoming a consultant. And I spent that year predominantly in Toronto, Canada, where I did the obstetric anaesthesia fellowship. I was lucky enough to do a few other short locum jobs before leaving, and one of those was in Wagga Wagga, and particularly enjoyed that and ended up returning to work as a full-time specialist there.
What type of settings do you think that anaesthesia can be practiced in Australia?
I think the nature of anaesthetic services depends on the size of the hospital and the population that hospital services. That's usually what drives what medical and surgical services are provided, and therefore which services need anaesthetic support. So some towns are too small to require a specialist anaesthetist. Some can support a small number of anaesthetists, and some need hundreds of anaesthetists. And I think that's important to consider when junior doctors are choosing their career path. They need to decide how important is the place where they live and whether that is congruent with the specialty that they want to choose. I certainly have colleagues and friends that are becoming anaesthetists but want to live in a small town on the coast and have realised that town is too small for them. It's too small to support an anaesthetist, and they've had to make adjustments. There's other things that anaesthetists are involved in, of course, emergency medicine, intensive care, pain management and retrieval as well.
Well, talking about locations, you mentioned a few that you have worked in. So why come back to country New South Wales? What have been the benefits there? Why not go back to a larger metro where you've come from in Canada?
So thinking again about different towns requiring different numbers of anaesthetists, Wagga is unique in that it's big enough to do a number of really interesting and challenging procedures, but small enough that you can really make a difference at a local level. And I found that really appealing. There were also a number of fantastic people within the department that I wanted to work with, and the culture at that hospital was fantastic. So those were also definitely factors. But I would say the main thing I like about Wagga is that it affords me all sorts of opportunities to do things that really matter.
And what about from a personal perspective, from a lifestyle perspective, being in Wagga? What has that afforded you?
I am not a big city person, and so I don't miss the city. I really enjoy the easy lifestyle that Wagga offers. The work-life balance is really excellent. Living 5 minutes from work, being involved in local sports clubs and being able to catch up with friends after work and still being home for dinner is fantastic.
Yeah. Is there a piece of advice that you've received during your training that's really stuck with you?
Really early in my training, I was encouraged to develop a professional vision for myself and then to work out the steps I needed to fulfill that. That's not the way it was put to me at the time, but now that I reflect on it, that's clearly what they were telling me. And they advised me to take time to lift my eyes from what I was doing right then and there and to look at the longer term. And making decisions that point you in a direction was really helpful. It doesn't preclude you from changing that direction, but it often opens doors for you as you move forward. As an example, I had a vague interest in obstetric anaesthesia, and so enrolled in some courses and did some professional development activities in that area. And then when the opportunity arose to do a competitive obstetric fellowship overseas, I was in a stronger place to apply for that, even though when I had done them, I wasn't quite sure how I would use those.
Along your journey, have you had a mentor or anyone that's kind of helped guide you along the way?
I never had a formal mentor, but I had a number of people that certainly mentored me. I'm not sure that I realised that I was being mentored at the time, but I certainly was. Those were my supervisors of training that provided really critical support for me at really important moments of my training. It's very stressful being a trainee, and those people were very influential at very critical times. It would be fair to say that I'm much more grateful for the help I received. Like now, I'm much more grateful than what I was at the time. These days, I have a number of mentors, and those would be colleagues that I really respect. They certainly make me a better anaesthetist, and I'm always quick to ask them for help or advice.
Yeah. You've had a number of roles over the years. What's been your most rewarding, do you think, and why?
The most rewarding role is now being the supervisor of training and being able to mentor the next generation of trainees and anaesthetists. I remember how hard it was being a trainee, and I really like being able to share the wisdom that I've gained with the trainees and help them through what's a really difficult, very rewarding, but a very difficult time in their professional and personal lives. And so I hope that what I'm doing is improving their training experience and helping them on their journey to becoming consultant anaesthetists.
Rob, you've hinted at this a little bit earlier, but what for you is the most rewarding thing about being an anaesthetist?
For me, the most rewarding thing is the diversity of the work. We're very privileged in anaesthesia. We care for all patients, from small children to the very elderly. We do procedures that range from elective to extremely urgent. And we work with other medical professionals that work in all sorts of different fields, from surgeons to obstetricians to proceduralist physicians, and that variety is absolutely fantastic.
What are the challenges, do you think?
Anaesthesia is a high-stakes specialty, and when things go wrong, the consequences can be really great. And that brings a degree of pressure to the role and tension to the role. And it's a job where getting things right the first time is really important. Some surgeons can also be somewhat challenging, but that's a different matter.
What type of personal qualities do you think are really advantageous to working in this particular specialty of anaesthetics?
There's clearly many different ones, because I look at my colleagues, many of whom are excellent anaesthetists, and they're very different people with very different personal qualities. But if I had to pick a few, I would certainly say it's very advantageous to be a thoughtful clinician, conscientious, certainly calm under pressure, and able to pay attention to detail. I think perhaps above everything, and perhaps true of all specialties, I think it's important to take pride in the work that you do. And some people, that seems to come naturally for them, and for others, not so much.
Rob, what advice would you give to a JMO considering a career in anaesthetics? And then again, what advice would you give to a medical student unsure of the career path that they want to choose?
So anaesthesia is a competitive training program, and so it's useful to decide early or to consider it early. And it's important to demonstrate a real interest in the career that's more than just doing a rotation in anaesthesia. It harks back to my point about planning ahead with your career. If you're a student and you have a vague interest in anaesthesia, start to demonstrate that interest so that when it becomes time to apply for the critical care position, that student will be more competitive and more likely to land that position. They can always change their mind down the track. And so it's a difficult line to walk, because a student needs to balance lining their career up in a certain direction a little bit to prepare themselves for competitive training programs down the track, but also remaining open-minded and acknowledging that they may completely choose their mind. And many people end up doing specialties that they never thought that they would do when they were a medical student. I think the other piece of advice is that, and I alluded to that earlier, is that medical students and JMOs need to look at consultants that are working different areas and see if their work and life aligns with their your long-term vision. I think if you take a look ahead and ask yourself, how do I feel if I imagine myself as a consultant in this specialty? That's a more useful thought process when making choices.
Yeah, really important. Rob, as we finish up, are there any memorable moments in your career that you can share with us?
I would like to share something that's quite recent. So having enough anaesthetists regionally has been in regional New South Wales, especially in Wagga, has been an ongoing challenge, and there haven't been enough anaesthetists in Wagga for the last 30 or 40 years. And that has an obvious flow-on effect for rural and regional patients. It impacts surgery wait times and quality of care. And training in anaesthesia within New South Wales, and perhaps in Australia more generally, has traditionally been very metrocentric. In New South Wales, it's based around schemes or networks that are formed around major hospitals like RPA or Westmead or St Vincent's, and those are all in Sydney. And so some excellent trainees begin their training in the country, but we've traditionally been unable to offer them ongoing training and a pathway towards fellowship. And that makes it very difficult to recruit and retain specialists, because those are very formative years in the life of a junior doctor, and when they're tending to put down roots. And if they're only in the country for 1 year and have to leave, it's certainly unlikely that they will return, even if at the time that they're there, they wanted to stay and may have ideas of staying. So I'm really proud to say that we've been able to create a new training scheme in anaesthesia that's based in the country, based in southern New South Wales. This is a collaborative program with Wagga and Albury, and we have support from a number of tertiary metropolitan hospitals, for which we're very grateful. I think it's a really good scheme. I'm really proud of it. It's gaining an excellent reputation for really high quality training, and we've attracted some really high quality trainees. And many of those trainees have bought homes in the region, are raising families in the region, and their partners have work in the region as well. And so I think this will definitely make a positive impact towards recruitment and retention of anaesthetists. We're going to have 12 trainees at any one time on this scheme, and we'll be graduating 3 trainees each year. And so we hope some of those graduates choose to stay and make our workforce more sustainable.
Dr. Robert Easther, a consultant anaesthetist at Wagga Wagga Base Hospital. This is Destination Medicine. Thanks for listening. Regional training hubs are supported by funding from the Australian Government under the Rural Health Multidisciplinary Training Program.